Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the first part of this talk, we learned about how our education deceives us into not understanding our true identities so that we can be used by other people for advancing their own purposes. So, this talk is about understanding the forces which shape our identities so that we can learn how to counteract them. So it is very important to understand that even though we think that our thoughts are our own personal and private possessions, actually they are very strongly influenced by the history, by the culture, by our environment, but we are not aware of this. Just like a fish is not aware of the water in which it swims. So in order to understand our ways of thinking, we have to rise above. We have to do meta-level thinking. We have to look at ourselves from the outside. We have to look at the whole of humanity and how they have been shaped by these streams of history. Once we can understand how to look at ourselves from the outside, then we will have a better idea of how forces have shaped our thinking. This will enable us to overcome and liberate ourselves. So one very important technique for this purpose is called the archaeology of knowledge. You look at an idea that you have and you ask, where did this idea first come into the streams of history? So this talk is all about the forces of history which have shaped our thoughts. So there are three powerful historical events which have shaped our lives and our thoughts. One is the event global conquest by Europe and colonization. In the early 20th century, Europe controlled 85% of the globe, and we were part of the colonized people. And Europe was part of the colonizers. So this was a very powerful event which has shaped our thought. The second event was something which happened in Europe, which was the Great Transformation. Europe also had a traditional society, much like other societies in the world, and then this society was transformed into a market society. And this shaped their ways of thinking. And the third force is the Western education, which we all receive, and this transfers the European ways of thinking to our societies. So we also learn to think like Europeans, and what this means is that the ways of thought that are dominant in market societies also become dominant in our lives and our ways of thinking. So these are three major forces which have shaped our thought. So I will take all of them in sequence. The first of these is the global conquest by Europe. How did this shape our thoughts? Well, Edward Said has written a very powerful book called Orientalism, and this says that everything that Europeans say about the Orient or the East is colored by the fact that they actually conquered the East. So one of the basics that is always present is that we are superior because we conquered them, and they are inferior. So this is one part of the assumption which you can find all over the European literature. We are advanced, we are developed, they are backwards, they are undeveloped, we are rich, they are poor. In any dimension you see, the Europeans are the good and we are the bad. So why did this happen? Why did this coloring happen? Well, basically the Europeans conquered the world in order to exploit the resources of the rest of the world. But the process of conquest was very brutal, very ruthless. Massive amount of genocides, killings, cruelty, rape, loot, pillage, every kind of thing. It was a very ugly process. So there was a need to justify this morally. To understand this, you just need to look at the Iraq invasion. The Americans invented three myths, three stories to justify their invasion of Iraq. They said that the people of Iraq are being oppressed by evil dictators, so we are going to liberate them. We are going to bring them the fruits of democracy, and we are going to protect the world from weapons of mass destruction. So all very noble and high-sounding goals. But what actually happened was that they destroyed the civilization of Edwards. They actually caused a lot of damage. Millions were killed, and all the infrastructure of the country was destroyed. So basically, the reality of what happened and the story which was told about were almost the opposite of each other. This exact same thing has taken place in the process of the global conquest by Europe. Europe conquered the world just to loot the resources of the world. This is the standard pattern which barbarians have looted advanced civilizations. But what was said about this conquest was not that we went and conquered the world and colonized it in order to become rich and to take all the resources away from them. What was said about is that we had a civilizing nation. We were the most civilized nation on the planet. We were trying to civilize the other people. And the white man's burden story is that we had the responsibility of giving the benefits of our advanced civilization to the rest of the world. And that's why we went to the rest of the world. So just like the Iraqi story, what is said is very different from what actually happened. So we need to understand some of the central myths of Eurocentric history because we have learned to believe in them, because these stories have been propagated in the Western textbooks. And we have to understand that these are myths, so that in order to arrive at the truth, we have to reject these ideas. So the first of these ideas is that history started in 16th century Europe. Before that, all mankind was just ignorant savages. Actually, there were lots of advanced civilizations. So the story goes that the Europeans learned to reason for the first time. Otherwise, man was just trapped in superstitions. Nobody knew how to think. So for the first time in the history of the planet, men climbed out of ignorance and superstition in 16th century Europe. Because of their unique abilities, Europeans had better brains than the rest of the mankind. Europe made fantastic progress on all fronts, and all of mankind was left far, far behind. So they became developed, and everybody else was undeveloped, backwards, ignorant. And the fourth story is that because they became so advanced, they spread out all over the world to share the benefits of their advanced civilization with all of the people on the globe. So what is the antidote to this Eurocentric history which we have learned to believe? First thing is to look at the cyclical history. Civilizations rise and they fall. And generally speaking, throughout history, there has been a pattern that when civilizations become advanced, they start indulging in luxury, they become less warlike, and then barbarians come and they take over and they destroy the old civilizations because they are young and energetic, and the cycle starts over again. So this is exactly what has happened. The Europeans were young and energetic. They had 3 centuries of experience in battling with each other. Warring was a sport and a game that Europeans were playing with each other for a long time. The rest of the world was civilized and in peace. And so Europeans developed their skills of warfare and they managed to take over the world. They had also this philosophy of Machiavelli, who said that you have to use shock and awe, you have to use power. You should rule by the strength and not by love, which meant that when they conquered, they actually destroyed the people in order to make them fear and put them in awe. So the truth about the conquest was not that they were trying to civilize the world, that they were trying to actually destroy, and they successfully destroyed all other civilizations on the planet. How did the enlightenment of Europe start? According to them, it was a spontaneous event. Suddenly, Europeans became smart. Actually, the truth is that it was the light of Islam which ended the dark ages of Europe. Islamic Spain was the most advanced civilization, and Al-Andalus, as it was called, had very advanced technology and inventions and philosophy and literature. When they became, that civilization lasted for 7 centuries. When they became uh, advanced and they started indulging in luxuries, and they became effete and effeminate, when the Europeans managed to conquer them, and in their conquest they got access to millions of books in the libraries of Al-Andalus. And so it was these books that ended the dark ages of Europe and created the Enlightenment. From these books they acquired science and technology, and they made tremendous progress, but they did not acquire the rules of conduct and the good behavior, and because that was more part of the religious heritage which they rejected. As a result, even though they made tremendous technological progress, at the same time they rejected Christianity, their own religion, which was their foundation for morality, and they did not accept any other religions. So as a result, morality has been continuously declining in Europe. And so they have uh, lost the idea of what it means to be a human being, what it means to care for others, what it means, the harm of killing and hurting other people. All of these advanced concepts, which are really what civilization means, have been gradually lost in the Europeans. So the second force which we want to talk about, which shaped Europe and then shaped the rest of us, was the great transformation which took place in Europe from traditional to market society. A traditional society is one where all parts work together for common goals. The idea is that a society is one body. Yes, some people may be low and some people may be high, like the foot is low and the brain is high, but they're all working together. So a traditional society is based on norms of cooperation. Everybody works together. Generosity, if somebody is in need and somebody has more, they give to the other, and there is social responsibility. We are all responsible for all members of the society. As opposed to this, a market society is very different. In the market society, the market is the central mechanism for distribution of goods. All our social relations, our relationship with our family, with our boss, with our employees, they are all patterned on the market pattern. There is a price to be paid, and then there is a benefit to be extracted. And the social relations are subordinate to the market. When the market calls for it, we leave our wives and families, and we go and work for the laborer, for the employer to earn money to feed the family. So some of the key items of which create a market society is a market for land and labor. So land is actually, in traditional society, it is Mother Earth. We have a symbiotic relationship with it. It feeds us and we take care of it. But in the market, the land becomes a marketable commodity. We sell it and buy it, and we don't care anything about it. Similarly, there is a market for labor, which means human lives are bought and sold for money. And again, this creates alienation. People are not uh, treated as human beings, but as just human resources. And the third thing is the creation of money, which is a sophisticated invention, which means that I can sell goods and I can hold money. The money gives me power over other people, I can use it to purchase lives. So these are three essential characteristics of a market society. Living in a market society shapes the politics, the economics, the society, the environment, and above all, our ways of thinking are shaped by market society. So Western education is designed for a market society. It is designed to create parts who will work in the factory. It is designed to create labor. It is designed to create managers who will work for money. Everything is accommodated to one goal. The goal of a market society is to produce wealth, and the education in a market society is given to create people who will be producers of wealth. In the market society, the law of jungle is the dominant. The one who succeeds success justifies everything. So if you can bomb a country, destroy it to ashes, and you can win the war, that is itself the justification and the morality. Winning is everything. Students are taught to compete with each other. Some who are successful become rich, those who are failures will commit suicide. Students are taught to be human resources. They are taught to be interchangeable parts. We don't take care of the individuality. If somebody is artist, somebody is philosopher, we don't develop their inner capabilities. We just teach them how to be interchangeable parts in a human machine. The education is all standardized. Everybody there learns the same thing. Economic theory teaches us that rational human beings are cold, calculating, and callous. They don't have any emotions. You look through the economics textbook, there is no mention of emotions of human beings. And they are calculating, they maximize profits, they calculate their benefits, and everything is determined by that calculation. And they are callous, they don't have any feelings about others, they don't have any social responsibility, they just only care about their own selves. These theories are adapted to a market society, and when we live in a market society, it becomes hard for us to imagine other ways of existing. So, and that is very important. If we want to create an alternative, we have to think about how we can change the society. But if we can't imagine any other way, if we think that this is natural, this is how people are, and that's what we are being trained to think, that people are naturally selfish, they naturally maximize their utilities, then it's very hard for us to create change. So we have gone very briefly through the history of ideas which shape our minds. Once we learn where these ideas come from, it is possible for us to get rid of them. It's possible for us to imagine other ways of thinking. And this is what creates windows in the prisons of the walls which thoughts make for us. So, for example, in our societies now, doctors learn medicine in order to make money, and bakers bake bread in order to make money. Previously, people didn't used to think this way. Previously, doctors would learn doctorate so that they could help people who were sick. But now, the same idea, if somebody says that I'm learning medicine because that makes the maximum amount of money, people will be approving that, yes, this is a smart man, an intelligent man. And if a person says, I'm learning medicine because I want to help people and I want to give service to mankind, people will say that either he's a foolish person or that he's just being a hypocrite. He's trying to say beautiful things while actually trying to deceive us. So this is how much change has occurred in our ways of thinking due to the market society. Now the thing is that we have to free ourselves from these ways of thinking, and we have to learn that human beings are actually the best among the creations of God. We cannot be bought and sold. All of the gold in the world is not enough to buy our lives. All of us are born with infinite potential. We can become whatever we choose to be. The value of our lives depends on the goals we set for ourselves. Today we are setting ourselves very cheap goals. We are saying that I'm for sale for 100,000 rupees. So then my life is only worth 100,000 rupees. If I say I am not for sale at any price, I am precious beyond calculation, then we will not be for sale. So our price is set by our own selves. Our goals are limited by our visions. We can reach beyond the stars if we choose to do so. And to do this, we must break the chains of our thought. Iqbal has said many poems to encourage us to think this way. And basically, let me sum it up by saying, वो फरेब खुर्द शाहीन जो पल्ला कर दो सोने उसे क्या खबर कि क्या है रहो रस्म शहबाजी. So he compares the Muslim youth to the eaglet who has been deceived by being brought up in the company of crows. The crows, they eat carrion, they eat dead meat, and they are low-flying birds. So by living in a market society, we are taught to aim very low. We just want to eat the product which has been produced by, we want to get jobs in a factory. The factory owner is the one who's producing the wealth, and we want to just get some share of this. We don't want to think about big goals for ourselves, and we don't know how to fly high. Everybody else around us is flying low. We also set our ambitions and goals very low. So once we learn to break these habits of thought which bind us, then we can learn to soar like eagles high in the skies and even reach beyond the stars. And learning the history of the ideas which enslave us is the way that we can learn how to free ourselves.